Hi there, I've just started to build this Ugly Stik. It's a 16-inch wingspan and it's got 17 ribs. Now the ribs are all essentially the same size, but there's 3 different variations that are shown on the plan. And what I thought I'd do is a quick video showing you how I produce identical ribs and introducing the variations that are needed for this build. First thing we need to do is take a look at the ribs themselves. Okay, so as I said, we've got the 3 ribs, which are all essentially the same size. They have exactly the same profile. The only variation comes within the thickness. On this pattern here, we need some 1/8, 3mm or 1/4 inch, 6.4 mil. Or on these, we need 1/4 inch, and we need some 1/8 on that one. The other variation, as well as the thickness, is to do with the slots for the spruce spars. On these outer portion ribs, on the outer portions of the wings, these ribs, you have a single spruce spar top and bottom. On the more central ones, you have a doubler as well, so it's twice as thick, the portion that you need to take out. So what we're going to do is we're going to produce 17 identical ribs of different thicknesses, and then we're going to cut out the slots that we need. Okay, so I've chosen a single rib off the plan and I've cut that out, stuck it to some 3mm plywood and cut it out, and the one I chose has got the markings for where the doubler goes, as well as the main spruce spar, so it shows the double width. And what I've done is I've cut out the 3/16 for the spars, the front spars there. It's nice and tight fit. I've also cut out the slot that accommodates the spruce spars. There we go. And eventually, as I said, we will need to cut that out to accommodate the doubler. But for now, just that. What I've done then is I've drawn around that on a piece of plywood, cut it out fairly roughly, oversize, to produce a second identical rib. What I'm now doing is bolting this together. Okay, I've now bolted those together and I've got this oversized rib on the back bolted together with 2mm bolts. You'll hear me mixing my units, mainly because the plans are in imperial and everything I get where I live is in metric, whether it's bolts, 2mm bolts, 3mm ply, or 6mm spruce spars. So I'm needing to kind of work and convert between the two. Anyway, so the next job is I'm going to sand this to size so that this bigger one is identical to the one that I've already made. I'm then going to cut out the slots in an identical location, and so I've got my 2 identical ribs. Okay, well, I'm now cutting roughly around the ribs with a sharp X-Acto knife. I mean, the closer you go to this, the less you'll have to sand off in the end, but the more chance you've got of making a mistake. I would prefer to leave a decent amount of balsa to sand off afterwards, because at the end of the day, it's a really simple process sanding balsa. So, right, so there we go. We've got that template, and I've got my other templates here. I've got 5 of the 1/4 mil, and I should have 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 of the 3mm, or the 3/16. So the next job with these is to make a sandwich and I'm going to bolt them all together using these, just this threaded rod and some nuts and washers, and with the plywood either side, like that, and then we'll sand them together. Now, the first time I ever tried to do this, I tried to drill all the way through and expected to come out in the right place and have everything lined up, which didn't work very well. If you've got a drill press and you can set them up nicely, then yeah, you could probably do that. I'm going to take a slightly slower approach, and I am going to drill each one individually. I've marked on this rib, which hasn't got a template, the top, because it's important to know which is the top, because they are not symmetrical. So I'm placing the rib over this balsa one. I'm drilling a hole, making sure to leave enough clear space around, and I'm pushing my two long threaded pieces of long threaded rod through, keeping that a nice tight fit. Right, so we'll put that there, top up. Now do the next one. Like I say, it's a bit longer than doing it with a drill press if you've got one. But I like this approach because I just feel I can make sure that it's correct. Now, this is the top, that's the top, so it goes on that way. If we end up getting one the wrong way around, when we come to do the sanding, you'll probably have one that doesn't fit. There we go. Okay, well, I now have my balsa sandwich. I've drilled them all individually and put them onto these threaded rods. I do find that doing it individually, okay, it takes a little bit more time. It probably took me 10 minutes, but I find it's a lot more accurate and I get better results than trying to do a number of different ones. Now, I haven't put these in any old order, I've put them in a specific order. All these ones at this end, including these two 1/4 inch or 6.4 mil here, so up to that point there, all these have that size slot for the single spar width. From there onwards, so this lot, I will need to cut out that again to make it thick enough for the double spar. So I'm going to sand these to shape now. I just need to make sure it's all square, tighten it up. I'm going to sand these to shape. I might use a knife just to take off the odd high bit first. And then I'm going to cut this slot through all of them using my razor saw, so that the spar fits through all of them nicely. And the same there, and there's 10mm balsa to go in the front, or 3/8 square. And then once I've done that, I'm going to take off these first few ribs up to that point, which are then finished, and I will clamp this back up in the sandwich, and I will cut out that to the thicker dimension. So I'll get on and do that now, and we'll come back in a bit. I thought I'd say just a quick word on how I'm getting these down to size. Initially, I'm using my David plane, which is ideal for this, and if you do it at an angle like that, it'll pick up the plywood either side. So I'm getting the gross shape using the plane. These David planes are fantastic. If you check out my playlist on my YouTube channel, you'll see I've done a review of these. But once I've got down close, I don't want to go too close because I might end up taking off some of the plywood, I will then be going across and sanding like this to do the final shaping. So, okay, well, I've spent quite a lot of time now sanding these 17 blanks that I've got sandwiched between my 2 plywood templates, 3mm plywood templates, and it's really rewarding when you get this lovely smooth finish. It's a really nice job. It's hard work, but it's nice. At the end here, where it steps down to take some sheeting at the trailing edge, I just check that's correct depth, so that fits nice and smooth there. The initial edge of that, I just did a cut with my razor saw first to get a nice straight edge. This is a 42 teeth per inch saw, so that's nice to do. We've got the slots for the central spruce spars, and we've got 5mm or 3/16 balsa wood spars that go in the front. And to do those, I just prop it on a piece of scrap balsa wood, and I run my saw down either side of the slot. And then I won't try and take this out now while they're all sandwiched together. I will, once I've taken this apart, I will individually go and just nick out that with a sharp scalpel, and that will come out quite nicely. These should be quite a tight fit. It's the way I made it with the template, and they may need just a slight sanding or a slight shave taken off, but I'd rather make them slightly tight than end up with them being a bit loose, because then they're no good to anybody. This is probably the hardest cut in the front of the rib, which takes the 10mm leading edge. Mainly because, okay, you can prop it up and you can hold it, but it's quite hard to get that angle right. So I cut it quite generously and then just sanded it to shape. So as I said previously, I've got my 17 blanks in the middle, although not really looking like blanks anymore, and 10 of those are more or less finished once I've taken out these pieces, but there's 7 which I will then need to cut out with my razor saw again to take this this doubler that goes on the spruce central spars. So just to wrap this video up, the ribs are not symmetrical, so as I take them off, I put a T to indicate the top, and as I said previously, I'm just going to use my scalpel just to nick out this. There we go. Now that is probably a little bit too tight, so I will just take off a little shaving off the back edge, and as long as I'm consistent, rather than taking some off the back, some off the front, I can then fine-tune each rib to make sure it's a perfect fit. So that's how I make 17 individual ribs, identical. I'm not saying this is how you should do it. I'm not saying this is the best way of doing it. It's just the method that works for me, that I quite like. There's lots of ways of making ribs, but I just thought I'd share with you how I think, what I think's a good idea.